Yay! Hey, y'all. Once again, another Lunch and Learn with the Illinois Prison Project. I am Ronaldo Hudson, the Director of Education. Thank you very much. Right? I really love these Lunch and Learns because it's really us talking about the work in simplistic language, the language that everyday people can understand. And so, just as a framing, I want to introduce the topic. The criminal legal system in this country was built on a foundation that has always treated some lives as disposable and others as worthy of second chances. That is exactly why every voice matters, especially the voices of people who have lived through the system. We have to tell our stories in our own words while allowing our lawyers and advocates and supporters to help us frame those stories so decision makers see full human beings instead of case numbers and charges. Within this system, there are few critical moments when we allow the petitioner to speak in their own on their own behalf. Hearings are often a space for people to get their perspective entered into the official record. I know firsthand how preparation can change an outcome. I'm free because preparation met a hearing room. But you have to be ready to tell your story in a way that lands with the decision makers. No one should walk into a hearing unprepared because these moments carry real consequences. When we prepare, we are not just fighting for a decision, we are standing up for our worth. That being said, that's kind of framing. Nadia and then Cindy, please introduce yourselves to the audience and whatever you might want to open up with.
Yeah, I'm Nadia. I am one of the attorneys here at IPP. I have the privilege of working with both Ronaldo and Cindy. And I've been at IPP for a few years now, and I think everything that you just said, Ronaldo, about storytelling and really the importance of framing, all are things that I've learned so much about and seen the, direct impact of in my time here so far. So I'm happy to be here today and share a little bit about, yeah, what I've gained in this process.
Hey, everyone. I'm Cindy. I am a paralegal, and I have been a paralegal for the past almost 10 years in both the civil and criminal side of things. And just like Nadia said, I have seen how preparation really does make the big difference.
Yeah. Thank you, Cindy and Nadia. And I always go back and think about one of our former community navigators, Brother Navier Anthony Jones, who's now over at St. Leonard's doing an amazing job as a director of reentry. And one of the things that I experienced was when he came home, what we discovered was Naviel had actually helped a brother do a clemency petition while he was still incarcerated. And he just so happened to get out at the time when the guy hearing was appointed. And so he actually went, think about that, so amazing. And he went to his hearing and represented the brother. But one of the things that I thought was so striking from that hearing that I've just never forgotten was that a family member or supporter of this brother stood up, sat down at a chair in the hearing, and just started talking. And one of the board members asked them what I thought was a really kind of hard question, but it was fair ball in my opinion. And I felt like that person was ambushed because they didn't get proper preparation. While we love people and we support people, we should be prepared in a way when we testify or when we go to a hearing to where we're not cornered like that or feel ambushed. But I'm curious, like, of Nadia, to you directly as a lawyer who does, deal with these issues and walking into courtrooms and hearings, like how important is preparing a witness to even speak on behalf of a supporting loved one or friend?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question. And I think in the context of our work, it does look different than the context of other types of advocacy. And I think um, a thing that I often tell witnesses and even clients is that we're helping you by preparation, we're helping you play the game, right? It's not that your actual hearing is a performance or that your actual hearing is a game or that you actually are not somebody who has rehabilitated and that you're not the person we're saying you are. But we're doing is sharing with you the institutional knowledge that we have because we've been in front of this board so many times and we've heard these board members, even though there's specific statutes and specific elements they're supposed to be looking at, we have borne witness to them looking at other things, right? We've borne witness to learning what they find important, what they don't. And so my role as an advocate, part of that is sharing that information. Part of that is exactly what you said, helping loved ones see that, when you go up in front of this board, your role is different than mine. Your role is not to do a whole presentation and to walk through this person's entirety of their incarceration, but your role is to share the thing that you're the expert on, right? The client is an expert on themselves. They're an expert on their own story. I'm an expert on the legal analysis. You're an expert on their reentry plan. You're an expert on the person that they've grown from your relationship with them when they first went inside versus now. The things that you have expertise on are the things that you want to speak on and to speak on with authority. So I like to always tell them, when I say we're playing the game, it means I'm going to
Mhm.
help you understand what the rules are that you otherwise wouldn't know because those things are unspoken. Those things are not written down necessarily anywhere, but you learn through trial and error.
No, I really appreciate that. Cindy, would you add anything to that? Because that was just so good. And this is why I wanted to have this conversation with you guys specifically. But Cindy, would you like to add anything to that?
I think one of the things that Naya hit right on the head was about how everyone is an expert of a certain part of our clients' cases. You mentioned, a family member is an expert on the reentry plan while we're doing the legal thing, and I think that that's very important to point out to our witnesses and to our and to family members, is to let them know you're the expert here. You and lived experience counts, because a lot of the times family members I've seen be very intimidated by all the legal jargon thrown at them, and it's like, well, no, you're great, you are perfect, you're why you were chosen, you're why our client chose you, you're why we think you're a good witness, because you are an expert in your field in regards to them.
No, thank you for that. And I do want to build on that because I have witnessed this even with myself. Like I have even done it, so I'll confess it. We'll listen to the lawyers and the advocates, and we'll start to want to mimic the language you use. And that's just not my wheelhouse. That's not my toolkit, right? And people have been made to believe, oh, I'm more believable if I sound like a lawyer or if I sound like, and I'm curious, one, what would be your advice in preparing family members to like, just to your point, Cindy, like speak in your voice, which is your area of expertise, but how would you tease that out for a loved one? How do you tease out for family members to not mimic what they think is the language, but simplistic, clear dialogue? Like, how do you coach that or advise around that?
I think the most important um, piece for me when I'm kind of giving folks guidance is the importance of authenticity. Because I do think it very much so comes across when someone is trying to come off a certain way or someone is trying to sound smart or trying to sound lawyerly. Like you are smart, you are an expert, and sort of being authentic and really claiming the expertise that you have, claiming the lived experience that you have. I really think even if you're faking it till you make it, right? I really think is so important. And we've seen even lawyers who are new to this work go in front of this board and get chewed up and spit out because we can sense the nerves, right? And so when we talk about preparation, it's not necessarily like figuring out the things that you're going to make up and say. It's like practicing being true to yourself, practicing that authentic statement that you're going to make so that you can get the nerves out, so that you can like figure out which words you might be stumbling through and kind of polishing that. And I think that's especially in the context of being a witness, especially in the context of, standing in front of this prisoner review board on behalf of a loved one. I think it's so important to remember that the reason that your voice is so important and powerful is because you do have expertise that only you can provide, and also because it is so powerful coming directly from you, and coming directly from your perspective. And a lot of the legal stuff, like, we don't talk like this outside of the courtroom either, right? Like, that's something that we practice. It's something that we do because we are specifically focused on the legal analysis and the statutory factors and things like that. But we all have different jobs when we show up in those rooms and different roles as advocates.
Oh, thank you. That's so good. Cindy, would you like to jump on that?
I just completely agree. It is very, very important, especially the practice aspect of it. I am always grateful for attorneys who will sit with witnesses or experts and actually do the rundown of this is what you might get asked, and this is, what's your answer going to be. It's never putting words in people's mouths. It's like, here's a test question. How would you answer that? And based on that, we can gauge authenticity. We can gauge whether or not someone is trying to overdo it. I've heard attorneys say, you're overthinking it. Simplify it, and just letting people know that that's what they're doing. And when they walk into a hearing, whether it's a clemency or whether it's a hearing in a courtroom, and they get asked those questions, they already have an answer prepared and they already know how to say it in their best natural voice.
Yeah, that is so important. I really love that. And I want to keep repeating that, like preparation, like practice, and thinking about like I do a lot of speaking, and people don't realize how much I practice. Like I could tell y'all, like I listen to my interviews, I'm like, ooh, I shouldn't have said that. Ooh, right? Because not that it wasn't authentic, not that it wasn't a real thing, but I'm thinking in hearings or in proceedings you have a specific role. You have a specific responsibility. And the more instructions and help you can get, all of us, like that's what makes this work so important. That's what makes the ambassador program, because we also do drills and trainings on helping people frame their stories, not rewrite their stories, right? So I have a question, kind of y'all answered it, but I do want to go back to this for a second. What role do families and community letters play, and what makes a letter powerful instead of just emotional?
I think just speaking from my perspective, I can say, I think that family and community letters allow for a lot more context than otherwise would be able to be provided. Because in these cases, whether it be clemency or parole, the actual hearing in and of itself is so short. It goes by so quick. You prepare for a year, you prepare for so long, and it's over in 20 minutes, right? And you can't have 30 different loved ones coming up to that microphone and telling you about their relationship with this loved one. And you can't have a bunch of different organizations coming up and laying out, exactly all the things that they're going to do. Of course, as the attorneys in this situation, it's our job to kind of synthesize, good Lord, synthesize those things. Why is that word
Yeah.
so hard? But I think that it's so beautiful to be able to give people no limit. You have as much paper as you want. What is your relationship with this person like? What can you support this person with if they are granted release? What are some of the stories that you can tell that nobody else can tell about experiences that you have had with this person that really inform their character, that really inform the way that you see them? And, of course, we are able to give people feedback on support letters. We're able to give people suggestions and guidance on what is most persuasive and what might not be super helpful. But at the end of the day, it's something that you have complete control over. And it also, I think, is an opportunity to provide that information outside of the context of like facing this board, right? Outside of the context of the actual decision day. You can take your time, you can sit with it, you can reflect, you can think about what this person truly means to you and why you really want them home. And you can put that into words. You can have other people help you with that. And I think
Yeah.
it really just gives you an opportunity to articulate from your own perspective in the way that you want to, not beholden to, whatever restrictions this board or decision maker has. And I think that it does so much also to validate the words that we're putting on the paper, right? Because I can say this man is a father and a son and an uncle and a loved grandson, but without letters from these nieces and nephews, who are they? Who am I to say that, right? And so it's not to say that it's a necessity every time, but I think that it's so helpful to be able to have that context and to be able to have things come directly from the perspective of, the people who have that lived experience.
No, absolutely. That is so good. Cindy, do you want to add anything to that?
I think it also speaks to the authenticity, right? Which we've been speaking about in the sense that, you're writing a letter. And a lot of the times one of the advice that I give people is like just think that you're writing a letter to another person. Yes, this person sits on a board, on a parole board, maybe they're a judge or prosecutor or whoever they might be, sure. But at the end of it, there's still also people who also have loved ones. And if you can remind them that they have a loved one or they are someone's loved one with your letter, that speaks volumes too.
Yeah, no, thank you. You all made me think about something, and this is my opinion. I'm not a lawyer. I am not a lawyer. I do not give out legal advice. But I just want to say that out loud. I have a lawyer, right? One of the lawyers in this call right now, right? But here's the thing. I think about because like people reach out to me in my capacity as the director of education all the time about family members. And one of the things that I get a lot about is, hey, would you sign this petition? This online petition on behalf of my loved ones so that we can, put it in the face of the governor. And it's been my experience that while that is a healthy self act, and I want to make room, do what you need to do, family members or loved ones, I would never discourage that. But I also want to be really candid and honest with people about, and I'm curious if like, how effective are those online petitions where you are seeking people to just sign on as a supporter of relief, right? Versus giving some actual sense of what does that mean? And I just think sometimes the framing of that isn't parsed out. Could y'all, if you would, parse that out a little bit?
Yeah, I think I hold a similar opinion. I think that all strategies are important and they all have a role and they all have a place. And I also think that things like petitions can be powerful to display like a number, right? It can be very powerful to say that I've got 3,000 people that really support me and know me and want to support this initiative. And also to your point, Ronaldo, I think it is devoid of like context a lot of times. And it is, I think I think something to keep in mind that is, I think, very prevalent from like a attorney perspective, but I think sometimes might get lost in from other perspectives is just how much creative control you have in things like clemency and parole cases, because these are not cases in front of a judge. These are not cases that are bound by the rules of evidence. Like hearsay is not a thing. Like there's just so many, it's just a different environment. And what that means is that you can give the governor drawings that your loved one made while they were incarcerated. What that means is you can submit a video of y'all at a family reunion talking about how much your loved one means, right? What that means is you can host, and I've done this, and I know many IPP attorneys have done this, have a family gathering. Go to your client's family's house. Everybody sit down and write these letters together. It can be a daunting task. We're going to do it together. We're going to answer questions in real time because it's important to understand your role. It's important to be able to share your lived experience. And it's important to take into consideration the things that we know to be weighed more heavily, right? So when you're in front of a judge, you don't have the ability to do a lot of these things. But I've submitted my clients' poems, I've submitted my clients' raps, and I've told them, you're not going to be a rapper when you get out, but I do think this is beautiful and I am going to share it with the world.
Exactly.
And we're going to get you on a different career path. But I still think it's so important to show like this person, right? To Cindy's point earlier, humanize your clients. This is a context where you have so much power and ability to humanize when the court systems often, and obviously we do work in court systems too, but like the criminal court system often restricts you and prohibits you from being humanized because to a point that you make all the time, Ronaldo, you're told to shut up. You're told to not tell your story when you're in the criminal court context. So now is when you get to talk. Now is when you get to say everything. Now is when you get to be creative. And I think, so I don't think, I definitely would never say petitions are useless, but I think when you're getting those signatures, what else can you get from those folks that is going to provide insight? If you put yourself in the shoes of the decision maker, what would they want to see to better understand the meaning of these signatures and do that too?
No, that is so good. Like I couldn't have. Thank you. Like I really appreciate that because I sure thought I was gonna be a singer, but that did not show up in my clemency petition. Like I was ready. I'm like I knew I was gonna be a singer, but no, I am a director of education. Cindy, I'm sorry, but this is so good. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I exactly what Nadia said. I would never discourage anyone from any of these online petitions. They do hold weight. They can hold weight. But it really is more about how are you using these petitions. Sometimes I see these petitions float around online all the time for everything, and then you just don't hear about it anymore. Whereas I've also seen people print these out and go to a courtroom, go in front of a judge, and hand over and say, "Look, these are all these people, they're in support," and that is also powerful. So I'm not saying that these online petitions don't work, but how are we using them to push forward the work?
Yeah, no, that is so really, that is just really good framing and it's helpful for me because I didn't think about it like that. Like, and that is just so helpful. So thank you. And because it's when I think about it, it's like, ooh, um, I do talk about aggravating factors and mitigating factors. And like aggravating factors are the facts around the circumstance of an offense, right? And then the mitigation is like I'm a rapper. Like, and I take the time to learn how to write lyrics and or I think I'm a poet, and I take the time to study and to speak words of whatever my expression, my genre is. And I think it is so important and imperative that we help people learn how to show the hearts and the minds of beautiful people that are just wasting away in prison. So thank you for that framing. I think that is so, so important. And so I have another question I want to go to y'all. Like, man, y'all so good, man. I don't like y'all might be the new lunch and learn team forever with me. Okay, here's the question. How important is a realistic reentry plan? And what should the plan include to show stability and support?
I think for reentry plans, I think realistic is the key word here. As Nadia mentioned, yes, we get really creative with the clemencies and we bring in who they are as a person, but that may or may not be what is gonna guide them throughout.
Mhm.
Art is very powerful and everything, but we also have to think in context of how the board may think. So even though our client is an amazing singer, an amazing rapper, a writer, a painter, and all that, and we truly believe that they can make a living from that, the board may not. And sometimes thinking about who the board is, who's on the board, what their leanings are. And as Nadia mentioned earlier, we've been in front of this board so many times. We have an idea. We have that background that our client may not, that our family may not, that their family may not.
Mhm.
So we're able to create a reentry plan that not only fits what our client truly needs and truly wants, but also what the board will respond to.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I've seen reentry plans where the client loves to draw. They've talked and they would just go on and on for hours about their paintings and their drawings and all these different mediums that they want to use in the future. And well, how does that look like to the board? Well, the reentry plan was actually written in a way where they're hoping to start their own, they're volunteering at a local shelter with art therapy. And we get them in contact with people who are experts in art therapy and say, well, do you need any volunteers? Because this person is great and they're really interested and they want to learn more. They want, so realistically, that's what can happen, right? And that's powerful, but it also speaks to what the client needs because when we talk about realistically what the board may think is realistic and this person's going to stay out of trouble and all these other things, part of that realism is whether or not our client can stick to the reentry plan. And
Yeah.
if we have a very artful and creative client and we stick them in a factory somewhere, that may not work, right? But if we put them in a school or a community organization or somewhere where they're doing what they love,
Yeah.
then that's realistic.
Yeah. No, no, I really appreciate that. Nadia, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think Cindy, everything you said, I definitely agree with. And I think something that I've learned throughout my work here specifically is the importance of it being something that's, palatable to the board and something that will work for the client and also something that actually works for the people who are part of the reentry plan. So, and I think a big part of that, like especially if we're thinking about folks that may be watching this Lunch and Learn and might be trying to put together a reentry plan, like what does that look like? I think that a big part of it is having those conversations with your loved ones, right? And like, what does it actually mean to have gone to prison when you were 17 and now you're a grown man? Do you actually want to live back in the home with people who see you as 17? Is that something that's actually going to work for you? Or are you somebody who knows that that is what you want and going somewhere where you're expected to be very independent immediately at some sort of transitional housing is not going to work for you, right? Like actually having to sit through and think about that. What does that look like day to day? Because to Cindy's point, the most important thing is that this reentry plan is something that works, that it's something that works for you. And in order for it to work for you, in order for it to feel stable and supported for you, that means you have to know what you want, right? So I think the reentry plan has to be very much so led by the client, and then loved ones and the legal team support you to figure out what that looks like. And I feel like that's a piece that goes missing a lot, is like, I really just want to get out, I'll go wherever. And I'm like, but we got to think about this, like what does it actually mean to go somewhere where you will thrive, and what's something that wouldn't work for you, and let's avoid that.
Yeah, thank you for that because I think about that and I absolutely want to be even deeper into preparing people that like because as y'all know, I did 37 years. And one of the things that we do in education is we have one of our trainings is the thawing out theory. And I'm 6 years out and I'm still thawing out. Like I at 61 years young, I tend to think about myself as so much younger because there is real consequences of long-term incarceration, right? And oftentimes that get ignored. But I was fortunate because not only did I have one of the most amazing attorneys, which is Jennifer Sobel, I became an immediate part of the Illinois Prison Project, which just has a host of so many amazing people, that I can tap into. But it is important for people to realize like we're thinking about this stuff, and that is a part of proper preparation, right? Proper preparation prevents poor performance, y'all. That's a real thing. Stop playing with me. But at the same time, right? When I say to people, I'm down with IPP, it's because I recognize the work that was done for me and I want to do it for others. And I see it in you all the time where you're working on behalf of people who have voices but don't have access to mics. And I think sometimes that's where it gets lost. The Department of Correction is designed to teach you to be a dependent because they want to be able to control you and they don't think about the release date. And so if you go through years of being a dependent as a grown person, go from immaturity to maturity, and you're still underdeveloped. Because I was 19 with the mental capacity of a 14-year-old, if you ask me, when I went to prison. I came out at 56. There's no question there's some rest and development somewhere in there. But having someone to help me build out my reentry plan, like we talked it through, like, okay, what does this look like? So people have to also understand that the Department of Correction has a tremendous amount of influence also over where you go. So being aware of that process is a part of being prepared. So I ended up going to Precious Blood, right? It was either St. Leonard's or Precious Blood. I was over at Precious Blood, y'all. So, like, how do we help people understand one, how to reach out to reentry as family members? Because that's something that sometimes we leave to the social workers and the lawyers, and that is something I think, and y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, that a family member can actually help with. Like, okay, if I don't have a room in my house, I do know the minister, and they have this program, etc. So how do we talk to people about that? Like not only writing a letter, but going and talking to the minister, going and talking to even the community alderman, even to the, like, hey, what stuff is available in your community for people coming home? The director of reentry in the mayor's office, Jojo Map, right? How do we get family members of making that connection as well? I know that was a lot. I'm sorry, but I don't know what parts of that y'all want to try to unpack. But any part of it you can touch, please do.
The point that you made about folks not being voiceless, but just not having mics, I really appreciate that language because I really hate that phrase, like being a voice for the voiceless. Like, no, you're not. Like, you're being an advocate for people who have been silenced, right? And I think that when you talk about what does it look like, or should folks make their own efforts and strategies to get connected to reentry resources, I think absolutely. And I think the biggest part of what I think the education team does so well at IPP is really helping folks see that the work that we do is not work that can only be done by attorneys or only be done by paralegals and social workers, right? Like the education team at IPP does an incredible job of creating templates and creating shareable versions and creating systems to share out those shareable PDFs so that people can gain access to information that they otherwise would be prohibited from having, right? Like when I talked about institutional knowledge earlier in our lunch and learn, thinking about like the work that you all do as a team really makes sure that the knowledge we have as an organization doesn't just live in our brains and doesn't just live at IPP, but it is instead
Mhm.
accessible by others. And people take that and run with it and build it into even more incredible things, right? So I think like just the importance of sharing information and the importance of recognizing that even if like you're not represented by our office, it doesn't mean you can't call us and ask for a next step. It doesn't mean that we can't share out our connections and our people. And even you just name drop so many people that are good resources to turn to. And I think
Yeah.
recognizing like, I don't know. I obviously we are different generations, but I feel like I come from a generation that is a little scared to make a phone call every once in a while. And that's, in this work we have to, right? Like it might be intimidating to call the doctor and set up an appointment, but I'm going to call Precious Blood. I'm going to call St. Leonard's, right? So yeah. So I think even just recognizing that you're not alone and maybe feeling like those tasks are big, right? And these hurdles are huge and feeling like it's such a mountain to climb to support your loved one in this way. But recognizing that even outside of the context of what are ways that you can get connected to reentry support, like what are ways that you can get further connected to the community of people that are also doing this work for loved ones, right? Like I think about a lot of the orgs like mamas that exist where they're doing a lot of good advocacy and also a lot of community building and a lot of relationship building in a way that people know they're not alone and have people to turn to when asking what these things are. So obviously IPP is a resource for that too. But yeah, I think that if nothing else, I feel like a big takeaway is just to know that a lot of the work we do can be done by so many other people, and it's not something that we want to have be gate kept. And instead, we're happy to talk to folks, happy to do legal clinics, happy to share resources and information because that's really what brings us to do this work.
No, thank you. I really appreciate that. And on behalf of the education team, hey, thank you. Because it's real and we do take it to heart. And we learn from each other, y'all. Like, I'm constantly, like, anybody that know me know, I'm old school. Hashtag Ronaldo would make a call. Like, anybody that know me. And I didn't realize that calling people panic people or causes anxiety. And I'm sorry. If I ever called you and I caused you anxiety, young person, I apologize. I'm probably going to do it again because that's just my black boy magic. Like I'm like, hello, how are you? Right. And so thank you for naming that because it's just something. And I learned that I want to name it from Bill Ryan. Like Bill Ryan is an advocate and a friend and just someone that I love dearly and played a major role in me being free. But he practiced the philosophy of the phone call. And so it is still a very important tool. And I really appreciate you naming that, Nadia. Like, we have to use it. And if you don't want to use it, call me, I'll do it. Right? Because that's teamwork. Like, okay, you know what? I'm feeling a little anxiety about this. Ronaldo, will you? Yes. And in fact, I know exactly who to call. So that is important. But I do want to ask one more question to you all, because I don't know we're getting close to time. I'm so appreciative of y'all. Y'all been so much fun for me. Like, what is a common mistake that's made by people preparing for stuff that you have run into? Like, if you could give an example.
I this question makes me come back to this point around like authenticity. And I
Mhm.
think a common mistake that I see, and not necessarily right, like that it is something that causes people to lose, but I think it is something that can be a hiccup or something that like, makes you tense up a little bit. But I think a common mistake that I see is folks wanting to say the right thing versus like saying their truth, right? I think you can get up there and say, I'm sorry for what I did. I'm so sorry to this family. I know I harmed a community, but like when there's no when it's not personalized, when it's not really catered to yourself and your truth and your experience, that I think is felt, right? I think that something that's so powerful, a recent change in the law that empowers folks to be present at their parole hearings, that empowers folks to have clemency interviews prior to their hearings that their loved ones are at, means that people get to tell their own truth, right? They have a platform to tell their own truth and to do that in the way that feels right for them. And I think to your point, Ronaldo, obviously there's a balancing act between, legality and then, morality or, accountability. But I think that it can very much so be something that's done in tandem with your legal team, right? Like you can get clarity. Is there certain things I should not be saying because of what the statute says, or because they're not true, or because that's going to hurt my chances? But also the priority and the thing leading the conversation should be you and your truth and what harm do you think you actually caused? And let's talk about that, right? And so yeah, so I would say a common mistake I think is people feeling like they have to follow some sort of cookie cutter layout. Whereas I think what actually sets folks apart and what makes hearings and petitions powerful and impactful is being able to see the emotion, being able to see the truth, being able to feel the authenticity in it. So yeah, that's one thing I can think of that really, when you think about preparation, like what does it mean, like you said, to reframe, not retell or, remake your reality.
Yeah. Cindy, do you want to add to that?
I think something that I was thinking of as Nadia was speaking is also, we behind authenticity and everything, we talk often about how, no one is their biggest mistake. And not just that, but none of us are the exact same person we were 5, 10, 20 years ago.
Mhm.
And for us to try as a legal team to try and see that and get others to see that in our clients is very important. But it's also very important for our clients to believe that they are not who they were 5, 10, 15 years ago. And I've heard stories from people who have said that they wouldn't be the person they are today if they hadn't learned from their past mistakes.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of the time, a mistake I see in our clients and in our even in family members and support, so anyone who provides support is still being stuck in that mindset of this is what they did as opposed to this is who they are. And once we start to figure out and we start to stay in that space of this is who they are now, this and if this is who they're saying they are and who they're saying they've become, let's give them a chance to prove that to us. We can better get that across to the board, and it's important for the board to see that like I mentioned, no one is their last mistake, and we all grow over time, and sometimes it's hard for us to believe that we've done any real growth on no matter how many people say it to us. And as Nadia mentioned, people are able to go to these hearings now. They have their interviews right before, and that humanizes people because they're no longer a stack of papers in front of the board and someone telling you and retelling you what is on these papers. Right now, they're actually speaking to that person and prepping that person and letting them know. And when Nadia said something about prioritizing, it made me think of um, how do we get our clients to have their say, to say everything that they want to say in a context of how they should say it, right? We want them to have their say, we want them to have their voice. Um, and it's really about preparing them in how they're going to say that.
No, thank you. That is so important. I really appreciate that because I really want to mark this beautiful moment and like a conversation that I think was long overdue. And I really appreciate like the fact that we're able to have this conversation around preparation and like how we like really emphasize for people that we're not their voice, we're advocates that walk with them, right? We want to walk with people through the process, not walk for them, not drag them along, but say, hey, listen, right? They gave us a microphone, right? And we turned it on, and we're going to help family members have access to it. If we're in the room, y'all in the room. That's why I teach people, all that. You down with IPP? Yeah, you know me, right? I be trying to get people to say that like all the time. That's what I try to keep in mind. Like, I don't want to be the star of prison reform. I want to be someone that opened the door and got out the way. So thank y'all. I really want to say that. Is it anything you'd like to close with, Cindy? I'll start with you and then to you, Nadia.
I think it's just revolving around the idea of preparation when it comes to any kind of hearing, not just our clemency hearings, but also uh, in court and everything is just truly thinking about the human aspect of it all, not just for the client or for the family, but we also have to remember that the people in these seats and these people of power, they're also humans. And when you think of it that way, it could open a door to the connection that you need for them to side with you.
Yeah. No, thank you. I will say this on top of that because that's real. That's kind of my discipline. One of my disciplines is not demonizing anyone in the process. Well, I don't like how you coming, right? I don't like that you so in my mind. This is an evil decision. It's not just a bad decision, right? And so I'll say that out loud, but I don't get to say you are a bad person because of your disagreement with positionality and decision making, right? And it's my job, it's a part of my job, our job, to try to get them to see it a little different. That's the part of the work, right? But I never demonize, well, that's not even true. I take that back. It's some people that be like, get no, I don't even want to mess with you. That's a true, and I ain't gonna front, right? But the work and dealing with the prison review board. I want to be able to work with them to bring people home. I want to be able to walk into the courtroom and say to judges, "Hey, get him a fair chance, not second chance, a fair chance." Most of us have never had a fair chance, and y'all trying to stuff down our throats. A second chance month. How about fair chance year? So anyway, thank you, Nadia. Please, I'm sorry. I want to give you
You
kudos.
just used up most of my time. No, I'm just kidding. But I would just say, closing off on this work is not easy, and we have an incredible team at IPP. And even then, this work is still so daunting and emotionally heavy. And just like reminding folks that, exactly like you said, folks have not really had a fair shot. This is a huge system that you are working up against, and it is normal for it to feel so tough. But the fight is so important. And working alongside some incredible folks that are incarcerated right now and doing this work, I think is just, it's so meaningful. And yeah, I'm grateful to be able to chime in on things like this.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Oh, y'all will be back. Make no mistake about it, because y'all just amazing. Thank you, Nadia. Thank you, Cindy. I really love y'all and I appreciate y'all. And on behalf of everyone that I know inside, thank you, thank you, thank you. For real, for real. Yay. Our call to action. This was such an amazing lunch and learn. If you take one thing from today's discussion, start preparing early. Document your growth now. Make sure your family and supporters are all on the same page. Use the tools at your current disposal. Don't wait for a hearing date to take this seriously. Preparation is one of the few things we can control in a system that often feels out of control. When you prepare your intention, we walk into hearings with our heads up, our stories straight, and our dignity intact. Today's discussion is relevant to so many of our toolkits. Some of our toolkits, like the Clemency Hearing Guide and the Pre-Hearing Conference Guide, is exclusively designed to help people navigate hearings. Other resources, like our medical release and our youth parole toolkit, discuss hearing preparation as part of a larger discussion of the overall process. We also have a brand new resource that speaks specifically to the preparation element we discussed today, how youthful parole candidates can access programming in the Illinois Department of Correction, instructions on how to document your growth through different types of programming to be ready for your parole hearings. Now, this resource isn't for everyone, only folks who qualify under the new Youthful Parole Bill, but the information inside can be instructional on how best to document your growth within the Illinois Department of Correction. For all those resources and more, please visit our website